So great to see you today, Mark. Thank you so much for doing this with me. I really appreciate it. I'd love to have you just start by telling a little bit about your organization to sort of set the context so people know who you are.
Well, good to see you this morning, Laurie. So I often introduce myself as, hi, my name is Mark Shapiro, and I'm blessed to get to be the president and CEO of the Harry and Rose Sampson Family Jewish Community Center here in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. We're a JCC, very much like many JCCs throughout the country. We're very proud to be the hub of Jewish life in our community. We actually have a huge portion of our Jewish community as our members and our users and our connectors. Our JCC operates out of 6 sites throughout the state of Wisconsin. We run an overnight summer camp. We have a separate site day camp and retreat center. We have a 7-acre outdoor water park for the whopping 12 days of the summer here in Milwaukee that people could be outside. And we also have early childhood education. And we're also very proud to be one of the few JCCs in the country that runs a year-round food pantry. For close to 50 years now, we have been part of trying to solve hunger and here in Milwaukee, and we have been serving people who have been challenged, whether they're homeless or just struggling to create that food justice that we all look forward to. And so, guided by Jewish values, the Jewish Community Food Pantry has been one of the largest providers of food to the homeless and hungry in Milwaukee. So our JCC is robust. We serve families from, as we like to say, prenatal until the end of their lives. And we're proud to be a part of people's Jewish journeys and their continuum. And we're a full JCC with fitness centers and camps and senior adult programming. And our JCC is strong. Over 100 years, we've been operating here in the Milwaukee community. And we are proud, and I feel very blessed to get to be the person who coordinates all of the community's investment into the JCC.
Great. Thanks, Mark. Tell me a little bit about your Culture of Philanthropy journey. I would love to hear how that evolved for you.
Well, all things aside, it's always funny for me to try and tell you how our Culture of Philanthropy journey has happened, in light of the fact that you and I have had the chance to co-captain this journey for a really long time. Through the guidance of past chairs of the board who all, as they come on, decide kind of what they want their 2 years as chair to look like. Many of them began to really rise up the idea of fundraising as the future of our JCC. We can count on our early childhood education as a stream of income, and we could count on our fitness center as a stream of income. And so their idea of trying to figure out how we increase our fundraising was very much a focus. Some past chairs were focused on stewarding our donors. Some were on trying to increase our donors. And what happened is that we tried to jump in at the wrong spot. And we jumped in by trying to teach our board of directors to become more engaged by being comfortable with asking people for money. We had a wonderful guide and a book, and things went really well, except what we discovered was that asking was only one small portion of what is really the most important concept behind Culture of Philanthropy. And that was when you entered our lives. The journey of bringing you in, and I can remember specifically one night we sat down with just the officers of our board and had a conversation, a soul-searching, why are you on this board conversation? And that was a breakthrough for us. And it began to help us understand how to shift from an idea of fundraising being something where you ask people for money to culture being a culture of philanthropy. And while it is just one slide in the presentation that you and I have had the joy of sharing with probably thousands of people at this point, the true definition of the word philanthropy is the love of human beings. And when we began this journey of shifting culture, which is by no means easy in any way whatsoever, it doesn't matter if you're shifting your culture to a culture of philanthropy or to any other culture of culture shifts are hard. So the first step was to understand what it was to take a culture shift at all. And the second was to shift to culture of philanthropy. And as we've been on this journey for now close to 6 years, our culture of philanthropy is strong in understanding by our staff, strong in understanding by our volunteer lay people, And most importantly, strong in the understanding of our donors who invest in our JCC, and they have a raised expectation. They expect to be treated well. And meeting their expectations has become one of our joys and one of our challenges, but our culture of philanthropy is strong today. It took a long time to get here. You've been my partner in almost every step of that journey. So that's been our journey. And I think that's the shortest version of that journey I've ever delivered.
Can you talk about, you use the word investment. Can you speak to that a little bit, and why you use that word and what you mean by it?
On this journey, we've discovered that shared language is one of the most important parts of really learning how to change culture. The first shared language we had to master was the difference between scarcity and abundance. And here at the JCC in Milwaukee, we choose abundance, right? And so one of the other ones was to stop thinking about investment, people who gave us money as that we were asking them for a gift. Gifts kind of stop at thank you notes, right? Somebody gives you a gift, you write them a thank you note. Then there's that weird moment where if they wrote a really nice thank you note, do you write a thank you note for the thank you note? And then it goes back and forth, but you really don't. At some point, it just stops. The idea of shifting to the fact that people are making an investment in us, that they are investing in a relationship with us, they are investing in what they hope will be the impact that their dollars make, that there will be an outcome, was a huge shift for us. A shift in language, a shift in how we reported how their investment had a return on their investment. And quite frankly, when you're talking about major donors who are going to be making substantially sized gifts, they made the money that they're donating to us by investing, and then having that investment have a good positive return on their investment. So when we speak in the language of the people that we aspire to serve, the people we aspire to invest in us, we tend to more easily meet them where they are. And so here at the JCC, one of our big steps was to shift to investment. We don't give a donor report. We give an impact report. We name things with intentionality to ensure that even if they don't notice the word, it seeps through. Do we call them donors? Yes, they are donors. They are investors. It depends on where they are. And we tend to find that a certain population of our donors, they love to donate, they love to give gifts, and they love to get thank you notes, and they don't really worry about impact. So in those cases, we actually then do still remain with some of the older language of calling it a donation. We thank them for their gift, and it makes them feel super warm and wonderful. But it is shifting to primarily focusing on investing and a return on the investment. And as we often have learned in stewarding, is that you need to know how to steward something. I always say when we receive a wonderful investment from the Harold Grinspoon Foundation, very different ways to thank Winnie than there is to thank Harold. You need to know how each person feels gratitude.
Great. That's exactly right. I love that. And I was going to add something to that, because it really is a mindset shift that as your staff thinks about it, when they're thinking about an investor and the return on the investment, that's one thing that helps to keep donor engagement, and they stick around. They want to stay where their money is making a difference. And many times very wealthy people are used to thinking that way. They're thinking about, is this a worthwhile investment? And when you're showing that to them, then it's demonstrating that it's a smart choice.
And as you and I have often talked about, culture of philanthropy recognizes the love of each individual, not only more love for the one based on the size of their gift. And so recognizing that for some people, a $180 gift is more challenging and meaningful to them than for some of the investors that make an $18,000 gift. It's that there is a fair and equitable sense of stewardship across the board. And so when you reach that pinnacle of a culture of philanthropy, you see the abundance in all of the opportunities. And that's been part of our journey along the way.
In your journey, Mark, of building a culture of philanthropy throughout your organization, I'm sure that there were some times that it didn't go exactly as planned and that there were mistakes that you made or missteps that perhaps you would share with us as a way to help those who are watching this video have some takeaway, like, don't do that. I'm going to learn from this guy. So are there any things that you could mention that were mistakes or missteps that others might learn from?
Well, I have to be honest, I'm quite offended by your question that you would assume we've made mistakes. For your editor's sake, we'll pause and then I shall answer your question.
I thought that was funny. We could leave that.
Thank you. We could leave it in, right? I think that they were so much more about culture change mistakes than they were uniquely about culture of philanthropy change mistakes. I think that what happens is culture change is long and it's arduous. And it is a 3 steps forward, 2 steps back kind of impact. Sometimes it's 3 steps forward and 4 steps back. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. The number one mistake that we made was that we had an inappropriate timeline for the belief in achieving change. So the one thing that I would say to you is this takes time and it's never over. It is because the landscape of who we're aspiring to serve keeps changing. So the first thing you have to do is you have to change the culture of one of scarcity to one of abundance. You have to change the culture from one of fundraising to one of a culture of philanthropy. And you're moving after a moving target. So it's exhausting and it has mistakes. And so the first one was that we did not have an appropriate timeline. We thought this was we have one chair and they're here for 2 years and we will achieve the goal at the end of 2 years. And we did achieve success and we did move the needle. We had an unreasonable expectation of the amount of time it would take. I think the second one was that we did not celebrate enough small journey successes. I think we thought that the end result was the success, that culture change needs celebrations for each moment along the way. And I don't know that we celebrated enough. And now we are celebrating way more what we're doing because it adds fuel to the fire. It keeps people energized to go along the way. I think that the third mistake that we made was while we made the cultural change of language, shared language, amongst the people who were here when we were going through our first round of the journey, we didn't really have like a curriculum set up to welcome on the next generation. Mm. And so we weren't as prepared 2 years in when we had 6 new board members join, or when we hired 3 new staff, or 100 new staff at the JCC, whatever it may be. I don't know that we were as prepared for onboarding new people to the work that had been done as part of the journey for the people who had been there from the start. So those are 3 things that we weren't as prepared for and that we're working on. And it's funny that you should have that orchid sitting next to you. It is my constant reminder of the fact that you just can't give up when things don't go well. When the petals fall off of the orchid, it's not dead. It just means we just missed. We just didn't pay attention to what its needs were now. And that the future of abundance and beauty is still there. It's just a matter of adjusting how we take care of it. And that's one of my favorite metaphors about that.
So, Mark, you said something a moment ago about onboarding. And one of the things that you did that I thought was really pretty cool is that you did put together an onboarding process for as part of the new board member onboarding process, you put a culture of philanthropy in that. Do you want to just speak to that a little bit?
Well, our guide along the way threatened us that if we didn't have culture of philanthropy on our agenda at every single board meeting, that we were going to get in trouble. And so maybe not that Laurie was that intimidating, but the idea of creating habits are what then lead to culture change. So not waiting for there to be an agenda of bringing up culture of philanthropy, but forcing it flat out, without a doubt, forcing the change was a huge component of what we did. And therefore, if we're going to welcome new board members to a board agenda that always has a culture of philanthropy on it, the words culture of philanthropy weren't necessarily knowledgeable to them. So we then added in probably about 30 minutes or so of our initial onboarding, which is about 2 or 2.5 hours, a 30-minute presentation about culture of philanthropy as a base. We have given out books about culture of philanthropy. Many of our board members have read The Soul of Money. Other texts that Laurie and the team have introduced us to as key components to building this. And quite frankly, there's very little question that what our next board will be getting as their onboarding gift for the text and for many years to come.
Cool. Can you tell me, Mark, what some of the best outcomes of building a culture of philanthropy have been for you and your team and your organization?
I'll be crass about it. More money, more resources. I am going to be crass that it is hard to, that at times don't lose sight of the fact that building a culture of philanthropy, while it does tremendously wonderful other things, the resource that almost every nonprofit finds as the single most valuable that it is short of and needs is money. And building a culture of philanthropy and an investment in it has dramatically increased our dollars. But it has also dramatically increased our volunteers. It has dramatically increased an emotional sense of connection to our board members. I can tell you that we have just recently looked at the fact that we are averaging about 84% board attendance at every single board meeting right now. That is an enormous jump from before we had culture of philanthropy as a component of what we do. We have built a bank of stories, important anecdotes that then can match up to what I think is the single most important change that we made, which is to not just have anecdotes, but to have data to prove the impact of people's investments. So a combination of knowing now the data points of impact, the great stories to prove the impact in an emotional and thoughtful way has caused our donors to feel very well stewarded and to want to consistently reinvest in our JCC. Our Culture of Philanthropy department now has its own standalone committee of the board of directors. We have now grown to 4 full-time positions. When I started as CEO about 14 years ago, we had 1 half-time position in the fundraising world. And every one of those positions is more than funded through the work of our Culture of Philanthropy department. Plus, in these COVID times, when our revenue streams, like our fitness center or our early childhood program, or for any nonprofit out there who has a strong revenue stream that may have been negatively impacted by the COVID shutdowns, we then began to rely on our Culture of Philanthropy to cover those lost income as much as possible. And we were ready for it. We were able to build an emergency campaign in under a week and launch it and set a goal of raising $1 million and then achieve raising more than our $1 million goal in less than a year. Had we not started 5 years ago trying to transfer to a Culture of Philanthropy department, we would have been scrambling. So that's really some of the examples of very specific examples of outcome. Board engagements, learning to gather data more strongly, tying data to stories, and ultimately raising more money.
It's great. Thank you, Mark, for all of that. I know that you're aware that this book is coming out. For those of us who are watching this video, I want you to know that without the partnership of Mark Shapiro, this book would not be what it is. I had this idea to write this book, and many of the stories in here come from our clients and people that we've worked with in the field. And Mark has really generously shared so many different ideas and included a number of stories about their JCC and their trials and tribulations, and frankly, their breakthrough success that is really unprecedented and is really at the top of any organization that I've worked with. And part of it is Mark's receptivity to trying new things and stepping into it. Mark, in the book, there are, as I said, a number of stories. Is there one of them that you would like to just share a little bit about so people can we've already had actually a taste of some of the stories and your approach to storytelling, but would you like to share anything from the book that stands out for you that might be useful for the audience watching this?
Well, I almost can't help but to talk about the realization of the orchid just to your right shoulder, and the story about a relationship with an investor, a donor, a funder, a keeper, a partner of our Jewish Community Center, and where the epiphany of the fact that I think that every single person who works in a culture of philanthropy should have an orchid sitting on their desk or on their windowsill, because there's both the metaphor of how challenging caring for an orchid can be, but when you get it right, what the results are, the hidden understanding of the fact that when you don't get it right, it doesn't mean it's over. It just means you need to let it have time, understand it, and come back and care for it, and it will come back around. But it's what's behind that story that's the value of a relationship between me and one of a major funder of our JCC, who a long time ago, before Culture of Philanthropy was in my mind, went from somebody who I barely knew to somebody who decided to invest his trust in me instantaneously. Not instantaneously, who in one moment went from somebody I was petrified of to somebody who grabbed my hand and asked me to go for a walk, and then shared with me the unfortunate news of his impending passing to an illness, and asked me to ensure that his wife got an orchid on her birthday every year. And this came out of nowhere, but was this deep connection that from that moment until he did pass away, the relationship that I was able to build with him, and to ensure that his wife received an orchid on her birthday, until the day that she said to me, "Would you stop sending me orchids?" He always thought I loved them, but I don't. And so I don't want the story to end sadly, but I do want to remind us that humor is also a part of these stories, that at the core of its relationship, it's about getting to know people and really understanding what makes them tick, and meeting our investors, our donors, our funders, our givers, our partners. We have to meet them where they are. And to keep an orchid as beautiful as the one next to Laurie, you have to know them and meet them where they are. How much sunlight they like, and what water they want, and when do they want fertilizer. And that metaphor should be not lost on every single person whose job it is to care for funders, donors, and investors in your community.
Right. Well, Mark, I thank you for your time, and thank you for doing this, and thank you for your partnership. And he was telling the truth when he said the slide deck that we have shared all over the place. So I had a slide deck, and Mark said, I have some ideas of how to improve it. And it grew and evolved from there. And he's shared it, and his community is doing probably, well, I don't know if as many trainings on it, but a lot of them. And really, I've learned a tremendous amount from the things that you have done, and your staff. Your staff is brilliant. I love your staff and your board. And really, the one piece you said that I think is really important is you've got your initial team, but then what do you do to expand and keep, having more community buying in and learning about what does this mean, culture philanthropy, and what is this different language that I'm hearing, and why is it important to use different language, and what are these distinctions that can help us to grow the capacity of our organization and the resources that are available. So thank you for your partnership in that, and thank you for your time.
Thank you for the years of co-captaining our journey and letting me grab the wheel with you sometimes.
Awesome. All right. Thanks so much.
Thank you.